Good morning, everyone. As a heads up, I pace when I talk, so try not to look at me. It's going to be a disaster. As mentioned, my name is James Morris. I'm Vice President of Product Marketing at Soci. You're probably wondering, hey, what the hell does Soci do? So that's what I'm going to tell you for real quick. We help the digital presence for multi-location brands. What that means is if you're a global or national brand that has a local presence, whether that is a bank, an advisor, a wealth manager, an insurance agent, we help them become visible through search, social, and their online reputation. This is very impactful. David hit on this very well. When we think about AI tools, we're seeing this change in the marketplace. In the last few months at Soci, we've seen an incredible change where search is diminishing. We started hearing this in the rooms with CMOs. They started hinting at this. They're feeling the pain of this. And as we started digging into it, we saw that this is really becoming a problem, despite the fact that we have consumer attention at a heightened level that we haven't seen before, but it's across a plethora of applications. So for financial brands, visibility now means being more than just in Google. It means being present online where any of your consumers are asking that first question. Now, there's a lot of fear in this presentation, and I apologize for that. I pitched this to my wife, she's a speech therapist, on Monday, and she's like, are you trying to scare the hell out of all these guys? I'm not trying to scare you with any of this, because over the next half hour, what we really want to dive into are some practical applications as well. So we're going to talk about how search, social, and AI are really merging into being these new front doors for how you are found online, why omni-channel relevance matters now really more than ever, and how proof points, whether it's reviews, social validation, these ultimately fuel trust in the next step action at a consumer level. Okay, so let's be clear. Search demand is down, and this is not just a hypothetical situation. We're witnessing what I would think of as a perfect storm. Google's perceived search quality is eroding to a degree. Obviously, AI is helping that come back. User trust is starting to weaken, and behaviors are shifting quickly. You can even think about your own experience about how you're finding businesses today. It's shifting very dramatically week over week. We still see older generations defaulting to Google, but younger consumers also just skip straight to generative AI apps. We talked about ChatGPT and Perplexity, or even social platforms like Instagram and TikTok. These apps become these new front doors for discovery. Now, a couple of years ago, Gartner, in typical Gartner fashion, predicted that search volume would be down 25% by the year 2026. So at that point, we kind of looked at it that that's a little ways away. We're not going to worry about this too much, and it's also just Gartner being Gartner. But what we found is that this future is really here now. It's expedited. It's come to us faster than we expected. And it's not just a gradual trend. We're looking really at a collapse that's already in motion. So it's about preparing for the future that is unfortunately here today. So while we can't just plan for 2026, even though it's so close, we have to plan for the fact that traditional search demand is reducing faster than we expected. So over a decade ago, if we think about how we engage with media, we spent about 4 hours a day on average consuming media. And we found businesses in a very different way than we do today. We found them through talking to friends and family, through newspapers, just thumbing through yellow pages, if that still means anything to you. Now, if we think about it, we spend on average 12 hours a day consuming media. That's personal and work, obviously. And we find businesses in a much different way as well. We find it through online search. We find it through maps and navigation apps. We find it through social media. We even find it through streaming apps. And I'm a good example of this. So I got to Toronto yesterday. I was really excited. I like to run in the mornings. That's not a flex. It's not an impressive run by any means. I just like to get outside a little bit and see the city. So I started looking for a run route, but I wanted to find a coffee shop as well. I tried to get coffee on the way back. So I didn't pull up Google. I didn't search for it. I literally went into Apple Maps on my phone. I started zooming around what I thought was a navigable way, and I started looking for a coffee shop. And then I flipped over to social because I do like pastries as well. See, it's not an impressive run by any means. I'm just trying to get coffee and pastries. And I wanted to see on Instagram if they posted any pastries that looked good. This is how I'm finding things now. And what's interesting about this is that this feels very fluid to me. As I'm hopping around and trying to find businesses and what they offer, it's very fluid. But to us as marketers and brands, this feels very fragmented. It's very hard to stitch these things together. And instead of being really found and us trying to find businesses, we're now discovering businesses more often as we doom scroll on the couch at night while watching Netflix, or we're trying to just catch up on social media and what our friends and family are doing. This is how we're now finding businesses in what feels to us a very fluid flow. Out of this time, we find that 1 out of 3 hours of this media time is spent on social media alone. So over 3 hours a day just scrolling Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, WhatsApp, and a handful of others. Even within social, we hop around platforms. Think about it in your own life, right? You go to Instagram for photos, maybe you go to Facebook for community, you go to TikTok for trends, you hop over to YouTube for how-tos. So for us as marketers, it's no longer the time where we can just be present in one app. It's not the situation where we can have a presence in Twitter or X or Facebook any longer. We have to be all of these at any given time, and that's both a challenge and an opportunity, right? This is a very hard thing to scale and do, but the opportunity is at our hands because it means that for brands that get this right, you can capture that entire block of time. And think about what that can mean for you and your business. If you can just capture your consumers' time for 3 hours a day, every day, because you're across these apps that they navigate in, this is a huge difference than hopefully being found just on your website alone. Now, our research at Soci shows that 97% of consumers discover new products, services, or businesses using social media. Again, I don't think this is surprising to us when we reflect on ourselves and our own behavior. We stumble upon someone, it's a brand, it could be a competitive brand, while scrolling, or we see our friends and colleagues talking about their own experiences, what they've done. That can be in TikTok, that can even be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's become this really somewhat obnoxious social app, but I get a lot out of it at the end of the day. The point that I'm trying to make here is that social is no longer this nice to have. It is a primary discovery channel for us and our consumers. So it's where people are finding new banks, they're finding advisors, they're finding insurance products. So if your institution isn't in that feed sharing insights, client stories, even timely rate updates, you're effectively invisible to customers the moment they're open to discovery. I'm gonna hit on that a couple of times. You're gonna keep hearing me say invisible versus visible, because that's the point we're at. It's a little black and white now. It's 1 and 0. Are you present when they're looking for you? Now, last year, we saw something really surprising. About a quarter of consumers now use social media to look up local businesses. Again, I'm that example where I was looking for Instagram this morning trying to find photos of pastries. We've gotten so used to search, but for Gen Z and younger millennials, I don't think I'm a younger millennial, but I'm gonna try to play that card real quick. Social really becomes this new search bar. Wanna find a local restaurant, you wanna find an advisor, they'll often type that into TikTok or they scroll through Instagram first. I'll give you another example recently where my wife, I mentioned she's a speech therapist. She doesn't travel a ton for work. She really just travels when we go as a family. Her wife is recently pregnant. So my wife came to me, or her sister, sorry. My wife came to me about a week or two ago and said, hey, I want to get a travel credit card. Now, you'd think I'd know anything about travel credit cards. I don't. So I said, okay, let's do a little bit of research. And the first place I pulled up was YouTube. I do travel a decent amount for work, so I'm constantly looking at those little just new devices that are smaller and more compact that just make traveling easier. So the algorithm on YouTube's really hit me for travel things. And I see travel credit cards from the Points guy and even local advisors in my area. So that's where we went. We went through a couple of YouTube videos, we took some notes, we had some common ones that kept coming up, some one-off ones, and then we actually went to Google's deep research model and plugged it in there and asked for insight about it. At no point did we ever go to the credit card site to get the information about it. We didn't want to do the research. That's how we found things. Now, please, if you happen to know my financial advisor in Cleveland, Ohio, never tell him this story because I think he'd be appalled by it, but this is how we're now finding these things. And this is the type of behavior that caught us off guard at Soci. But ultimately, if I'm anything of an indicator, it's quickly becoming the norm around how we are finding new businesses and services. When we plot out platform usage for local search, we still see that Google leads with over 80%. But what's important here is that that's down from previous years. Social networks like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, these have grown to become the second biggest share. So more importantly, we see that AI chatbots poured onto the screen this year. That's not surprising to us. We're all using these things. But even so, with 83% using Google, while that seems dominant, it's weaker than what we've seen before, and these social and AI tools are climbing quickly. So that means that you're competing across 3 front doors of search, social, and AI, and it's only going to get stronger in those areas. And Gen Z's rewriting these rules. Our research found that 18 to 24-year-olds use an average of 3.6 different platforms when evaluating a single purchase. That could be Google, then YouTube, then Instagram, then an AI research model, just like how my wife and I looked for a travel credit card. They jump around until they feel confident. Gen Z is twice as likely as older cohorts to use social sites for business searches. And then 40% of all consumers now turn to social media at some point when researching local businesses. This platform diversity, again, while it feels natural to us as the consumers, looks like fragmentation to us as marketers. But if you can stitch these touch points together, this is where you start to stand out. Now, I want to talk about financial services specifically. If we dive into these numbers, 80% of financial services consumers start their journey online, either phone or laptop, before they ever call an advisor. I don't think that's that surprising to most of us. What we're seeing here is that they're just not starting by asking friends and family. I think that is interesting to some degree because you want that trusted source. And what we're seeing is that Gen Z specifically is finding that trusted source online now. Mobile queries for financial advisor have jumped 75% in the last 2 years alone. And on top of that, 1/3 of consumers say they turn to social media for financial advice. And for Gen Z, that number is 76%. So for banks, wealth managers, advisors, if we're only optimizing locally for Google, then we're missing huge swaths of intent that live on social. Now, just building upon that real quick, I want to zoom in on where prospects do live online. Like, obviously, social and AI, we're talking about these things, but we know that local visibility is now mission critical. Half of all searches carry local intent. That's not new. So every time someone in a local market looks for an advisor, a branch, or an insurance quote, they expect to see you there. On social media, the posts that we see win the most engagement, they're tied to specific community. Whether it's your city's Chamber of Commerce event or a client story from a local branch. And nearly every one of these potential customers, 98%, will read reviews and let that guide their decision. So again, they're not asking friends and family that are close to them. They're looking for that validation and reviews from their peers online. So local marketing has become this new battleground for customer acquisition. And if your business isn't showing up consistently in maps, feeds, review sites, again, you're invisible when it matters the most. So how do we start to connect this into really a seamless presence for us as consumers? I tried to break this down into essentially 4 pillars. I want to start with localized search. When you share content, again, tied to that community, and again, some other examples, just like a branch's open house, or maybe you're sponsoring a Little League team locally, that type of engagement spikes because prospects and consumers recognize that this is my town, this matters to me. On the SEO front, SEO is not going away. Per David's point, it's more important than ever. Your site still needs to be rock solid, even if no one's clicking into it, which is kind of an interesting idea, right? It still needs to be fast. It needs to be mobile friendly. It has to have structured pages and the right schema so that search engines, and most importantly, these AI agents can find and understand your offerings easily. Again, on reviews, it's not just about star count. This is what we consistently hear is like, I've got this great 4.5 star count. That's amazing, but if you don't have recent reviews, if you're not engaging with those reviews, then unfortunately you're not viewed as active and trustworthy. Therefore, you're ranked lower when it comes to search engine and AI assistance as well. And then finally, the 4th piece of this is really around organic content and social proof, specifically around organic content. With generative AI tools, we now have this opportunity to create content ad nauseum at some extent, right? We have this quantity capability that we never had previously, or at least without having to take on a ton more people and add a ton more money towards this. But we need to be thoughtful around this. So client stories, how-to articles, even local news tie-ins, Every piece of content you publish, you have to recognize feeds back into search results, map listings, and these AI overviews, but it needs to be thoughtful. And we'll talk a little bit more about this around Gen Z. Each of these 4 pillars, if you do independently, it helps. I'm not here to say that you need to turn around today and do all 4 of these if you're doing none of these. You're likely doing some of these. But when you stitch all 4 of these together, this is where your local relevance roadmap really comes and sings strong. It's not all rosy, obviously, for brands that ignore this shift. Brand loyalty is slipping. Our own consumer behavior index shows a double-digit decline in brand loyalty over the last year alone. And then branded search volumes down year over year. Even more striking out of this is that 7 out of 10 customers will abandon a brand that isn't locally accessible or doesn't respond online. So if they don't see you active and engaging, they're going to go with someone who is. So if you're not meeting customers where they are, they'll simply find someone else who is, and without that 4-pillar type of approach, you're surrendering market share to competitors who are more visible. So with this search fragmenting, social becoming search, and really the younger cohorts mixing platforms across their search, what this means for marketing is that this old rule book of optimize Google and maybe post occasionally on social, it just no longer applies. We have to have this interconnected approach that spans every touch point across these channels. And if you stick to a single channel, ultimately you're just gonna see diminishing returns. So I tried to break this out into a quick synopsis too, just for if you're taking notes. But traditional search is fragmenting and fracturing. AI tools and social platforms are rewriting that. So again, if you're only optimizing for Google, you'll end up being invisible. Brands that must expand beyond that search page into social feeds. There we go. Maps, chatbots, really wherever your consumers are looking. And if you don't know, you have to ask. If you feel blind, especially at a local level, and you're not sure, ask those local advisors, those wealth managers, where do they feel their consumers are, and help guide them along that path. And ultimately, marketers have to evolve with the channels where customers actually spend that time. Now, I want to take a second because even if we talk about Google and traditional search, it's evolving in and of itself. If you've used Google in the last couple of weeks, especially after I/O, like you've seen a lot of this. We have rich cards, we have videos, images, even social mentions and AI pop-ups. You get that AI roll-up. Honestly, AI got really good really fast at answering most questions. I search a lot for work. I try to stick in the AI apps, but I still go back to Google, occasionally Bing for whatever reason. But last week alone, I only went down to the blue links twice. Once was because the AI roll-up gave me an answer I really questioned, and the second one is it just didn't answer the question I was trying to get to. I didn't ask it in the right way, so I scrolled down and clicked a link. What's interesting here is that most queries soon will end in this 0-click result. You get the answer right there. You never are going to need to visit a website. So that means ranking for those top 10 blue links is no longer enough. You have to earn placements in these rich elements, the images, the videos, the schema-powered cards, and ultimately feed the AI models that surface answers directly. So if your brand's not structured to appear in these new formats, honestly, again, you're invisible. Even within these search results, younger consumers crave authenticity. I hinted at this a little bit before. They want real stories, they want real experiences, and they want validation from people, not just a brand static page. They're no longer relying on a single source. They could check a brand's Google rating, then they're going to scroll through TikTok videos, and then they're going to ask for ChatGPT. And if they don't see the peer validation along the way, whether it's unfiltered reviews or even user-generated content, they move on. Even with our own platform data, we see this shift. Search impressions are down 10% year over year. If we zoom into the last half of 2024 up until essentially yesterday, we see that search impressions have dropped by 18%. And these aren't isolated blips. They're industry-wide signals that consumers are splitting time among a plethora of other channels. And we're not alone in seeing this, right? I can't just stand up here and tell you that we're the only ones seeing this. I need to validate this somehow. So Search Engine Land reports that 42% of people say Google search is becoming less useful. The subhead reads here that users are relying on their community for information rather than Google. In financial services, this shows up with people asking LinkedIn groups for advice on an advisor to choose. They scroll through client testimonials on Facebook, or they even poll peers in private Slack and WhatsApp groups before they'll even click within your website. They trust personal stories and peer recommendations more than generic search results. And then I mentioned before, but Gartner predicted this slip. As we said, the future's here now. So if your institution still relies on Google alone, you're ceding that 42% of community-first audience to competitors who are active on TikTok, Instagram, financial service forums, and the AI assistant. So expanding beyond traditional search is no longer a nice to have. It's really becoming table stakes for all of us. So I do want to talk about this opportunity. All of this fragmentation and search decline, I'm not here to say is a death knell. It's an opportunity. This is where my wife was like, this is really terrifying. So I want to make sure that you see this, that you can pivot now to really own the attention of tomorrow's consumers. We've discussed why search is breaking, but I obviously want to leave you with some concrete steps to increase mind share and market share. Now, our data confirms the macro trends, but I want to zero in on financial services just a second, is that within the platform I mentioned, we see 10% down year over year. For financial services, it's actually 17%, so it's higher than the average. And that's not a glitch. It signals that fewer people are turning to Google for financial questions, and they're instead exploring those other channels, whether it's social, niche review sites, chatbots, whatever it may be. In practical terms, though, a 17% drop means nearly 2 out of every 10 consumers aren't seeing your Google listings anymore. So if you don't shift resources to social and AI channels, you're essentially invisible to this chunk of audience, and that 2, as we see the progress going, is going to become 3, and then 4, and then hopefully not, but potentially 5. So now's the moment that we have to modernize these search strategies, localize our presence, and build out social and AI-ready content so that you can capture that 17% before your competitors do. So as we look at 2025 and even into 2026, I want this to be a little practical. So first I want to hit on is search everywhere optimization. Again, you can't stop at Google. Your business data needs to live in social feeds, map apps, and AI chatbots. This is business address information, contact information, branch hours. All of these things need to be able to be found across the web, not just within Google. So my recommendation here is start applying, the appropriate schema, even using financial services as an example, to every branch and product page, and then make sure that those updates flow through your Google business profile, through Apple Maps, any AI plugins or chatbots that you may use. We've seen banks and credit unions pick up entirely new lead sources by simply syncing the same clear, accurate information across multiple platforms. The second piece here is build trust and credibility. I hit on this with the reviews. Again, nearly all customers are reading reviews before choosing a financial provider. So make it effortless for them to share feedback. Automate a short, friendly message after an account opening or a loan is closed. Heck, even my lawn, the guys who mow my lawn, they come out every Friday. Every Monday they bill me, and every Monday I have an email in my inbox that says, please leave a review for us. They consistently follow up on this. That's the type of behavior, but it's not just about asking for the review, it's then communicating and having that conversation in public. So even if they're leaving positive reviews, you still want to be communicating to show everyone else that you're actively listening and answering any of those questions and having that two-way conversation. At the same time, focus your content on real customer questions. Think how to compare mortgage options or even what to expect when opening your first checking account. This type of writing style makes people first, and it makes your brand more relatable at the national and global level as well as at that local level. And third, obviously, we have to position for AI recommendations. The future of discovery is AI agents. It's not going to be typed queries. So to earn a spot in those AI-driven answers, we need to make sure that we have the right schema on our websites. We're still optimizing for SEO, but we're also focusing on earning trust, the experience, the authenticity. All of these things are so important to us in this online piece. And ultimately, stitching these 3 areas together can make you successful in the back half of this year and on 2026. So before I go, the big thing I want to leave you all with here is, again, I don't want this to be scary, is that this is possible. Even when we think about local, where the local agent or the local advisor is wearing a million different hats. They're not marketers at the end of the day. You all here in this room are marketers. You understand what needs to be done, but they do not understand what needs to be done. So we worry about their small budgets. We worry about their small teams. But the marketing leaders of 2025 won't be the largest budgets or the largest teams. Honestly, they're the institutions that treat AI as part of their core staff as that force multiplier. So this means reallocating local budgets from traditional SEO and local content ultimately into these AI-driven workflows. How can we help this local presence scale out where their information is, make sure that they're present on social platforms, and making sure that they're responding to those reviews. If you do this thoughtfully by piecing this together with AI tools with clear guidelines and obviously human oversight, I'm not immune to the fact that we have risk and compliance needs, of course. If we do this right, we'll ultimately outpace our competitors that are still dependent upon spreadsheets and monthly updates. By making AI that multiplier, you'll deliver fresher, more relevant information across every channel and always stay one step ahead. Any questions? Yeah?
Gran, we'll get a microphone to you right there.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm Werda from Healthcare Ontario Pension Plan. Quick question for you. What do you think is the best and the worst platform to market financial services to younger audience, let's say Gen Z and young millennials?
I honestly think that the best platform is becoming TikTok. I have been a holdout on TikTok for way too long. I thought it was just ridiculous. I was like, I'm aging out of this. But that's where we see these trends pick up. And honestly, that's where Gen Z is going for relevant information that relates to them. They trust people there, especially as it gets picked up more. It doesn't mean just having a presence on TikTok, but having that authentic content and education. They're seeking that out. So I see TikTok as continuing to be that place that people are going. I'd say one of the worst platforms still is, we're seeing it with Twitter and X, like it's just not as much engagement. And obviously there's a lot of political pieces around that, but we're seeing that less engagement. It's there, it's very big for sports and AI, but as far as business information, if you've ever tried to search on Twitter, it's impossible. You see a tweet and you try to go back and find it. Grok makes that a little bit better. I think that will get better, but I don't know that they'll be able to recapture that market that's going to the other social apps.
Good question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there's another question back here. Did I see one? Yep.
Max from Manulife. James, how different is traditional SEO to AI optimization? And if there is difference, what are the best recommendations for AI optimization?
I'd say, to put it simply, is there's a different type of schema to mark that up with. I think for SEO, we can luck out with decent strategies. AI is really looking for authentic content as well. So having those case studies, even if it's posting podcasts and videos where it knows that you're just not automatically using generative AI to create a lot of that content, it's not about quantity, it's really about the quality of that, and that's where we're starting to see a lot of that come in more. But it's, of course, making sure that you don't take the just traditional SEO schema to your pages, but also updating it for AI. Like one of the basic ones I always talk about is just making sure that you have your FAQ help decently tagged within there so that it can find questions. That's what people are going to Google to get questions answered, and even within these AI, ChatGPT, et cetera. So making sure that it's marked up for that it can find that easily as well.
Good question. Was there a question down this side I thought I saw? No. Going once? Going twice?
Thank you all.
James, thank you. Yep.